Welcome to the True Demon Lord Show. I am the True Demon Lord, Franco, and today we have a special guest. We have Mr. Byron Sidhu. How you doing, Byron?
Good, thank you, mate. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. So, we're gonna do a tier list today, right? So we're gonna take every single unit and we're gonna rank it. It's as simple as that. Everyone knows what a tier list does. But before we do that, let's have a little bit of a chat. So, for the viewers that may not know who are you?
So I've been on the 40k scene for a very long time. Been playing demons for probably since 8th edition, I would say, competitively, but longer than that, like overall. Been playing them overall since 5th edition. And before that, I was known as a Tau player. Grr, hate me.
Boo, boo.
Um, But yeah, now I'm trying to basically re-establish myself as a demon player, and I have been since 8th edition. Um, so yeah, I've been on the scene for a long time. Been playing tournaments since I was 14, and I'm now 26. So a very long time.
It is a very long time. It's longer than me. I've been playing the game longer than you, but competitively playing for about 7 years since I was about 2021. But yeah, so you are also just like me, a massive demon lover. And we both attended an event on the weekend, the Hertfordshire GT, and we both. Well, I mean, I did okay. I went 3-2 and 10th out of 40, but you done pretty well, right?
Yeah, so I finished fifth, and I looked back at my one loss, and it was basically down to one major mistake where I basically delayed myself playing my normal game for a whole turn. And that kind of caused all sorts of ramifications. It was against Black Templars, so the kind of game like where you make one mistake, you delay yourself, and then you just haven't quite staged right.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that kind of threw me off for the rest of the game, and then I ended up losing it. Um, but otherwise, 4 wins, still a very good record, and I feel like I played pretty well throughout the tournament.
Yeah, so you done. I mean, quite unlucky, really, not to go 5-0 because I remember you saying because Black Templars is a hard matchup anyway, right? Like I hate the Black Templar matchup.
Yeah, so on paper, yes. But when I looked at really nice guy I played against, when I looked at his army list, it was basically two blob units. So one was a big Crusader squad led by Grimaldus, and one was a big Sword Brethren squad led by Helbrecht and a lieutenant. So we all know what those guys do. We've got
Mm-hmm.
lethal hits on the Sword Brethren. They've got +1 damage. Helbrecht gives them lethal hits on fives. So they're just really brutal into monsters with the weight of attacks that they hit them with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they were inside a repulsor. So my whole game plan was basically they were on one side, try and make them deploy on one side, and then either use my Nurglings to move block the repulsor and stop them getting forward onto my objectives where my monsters are. Or alternatively, if he goes first, fine, he's going to rush the Nurglings, he's going to get in my face quickly, and then I just have to get my monsters to the opposite side of the table. And then he won't be able to catch me because they've got no source of advance and charge or anything. Um, the Crusader squad I could absolutely deal with and take, but it was going to take a full turn basically of Shalaxi and Scarbrand and probably some Bellicor shooting as well to kill the whole unit.
Okay.
So it was really interesting how we ended up playing it. And because I made this one silly move, it was basically in relation to his infiltrators. He had one squad of infiltrators. And I I went first. And round one, I had a squad of fiends on the table on one side, on the side where his infiltrators were. Now, I was going to actually move them from one ruin to another. They were never going to get shot at because there was nothing that could see them, possibly even get an angle to shoot them, right? They were going to move to this ruin, and the following turn they'd have like a move 12 and a 4-inch charge onto an objective with these infiltrators sat on it, kill the infiltrators, and then I can send Bellicor and Shalaxi from my home point, which gets stickied, not my home point but like one of the middle ones, like the next
Yeah.
one along on the opposite side.
Mm-hmm.
The plan was to try and teleport Bellicor and Shalaxi onto the other side of the table where the Sword Brethren are nowhere near. but the Crusaders are, and then I can get Shalaxi, Scarbrand, Bellicor all mobbing the Crusaders. For some crazy reason, I moved those fiends completely wrong, and instead of staging into that other building, I thought in my head for some reason I went second, and so I ended up moving them back to try and screen my backfield, thinking I've gone second and thinking his reserves are about to come in. But I was like, and then afterwards I looked at it and went, why did I do that? Why did
Oh,
I why did I go and screen thinking I was going second? I bloody knew I was going first. And so basically that delay, because one squad of fiends was in deep strike, again, for that whole reason of the infiltrators, ingress in and then go charge them the next turn. Not having that third squad of fiends on the table and then also making that mistake with moving them backwards instead of forwards essentially cost me the game, because it meant that the Sword Brethren had an extra turn to come and kill things, push up on Shalaxi and Bellicor. And the hilarious part was when they made it into Shalaxi, like they didn't even break a sweat at killing her. I failed all my invites, every single one,
oh,
and they just went blat. So yeah, that was not fun to witness, but it was completely just like one misplay on my part, and how when you have a model like Shalaxi that's so expensive in your army, one misplay can literally just cost you the game.
yeah, it really can. And that's actually a really good segue, right? So we're going to talk about Shilaxi in a bit, but there is obviously an argument: do you take her, do you not take her? But you're right. Like, if thing is with Shilaxi, I find she has a bit of a ceiling because she's so many points that you've got to make sure you really get the most out of her. And if you just misuse her and she just goes down a bit too fast, which can happen, it really hurts. And then you're 500 points down nearly, and then you're like climbing a bit of a mountain at that point, isn't you?
Yeah, for sure.
So, but yeah, like you've kind of stuck with a similar list that you've been running for a while, and then just kind of pulled it into prior. But I know we talk, so we've been talking about changes. And obviously, like you, I'm a big Shalaxi simp, but I think we've both kind of, well, I've kind of come to the conclusion I think she might be maybe a bit too many points for this kind of meta, but we'll get all into that in a minute. So let's not give it all away. We can actually talk about that when we get to her. So, but well done. You smashed your first. That was your like obviously first prior event, right?
First prior event, yeah.
And did you have many practice games before that?
I had two practice games, one win and one loss. So the win was against Tyranids, and the loss was against Thousand Suns, where I really felt the wrath of secret missions, the wrath of Magnus.
Yeah. Secret. So I almost learned. So secret missions are weird, right? I feel like you've kind of got to build into them, but I played poorly on in game three with his Dark Elder, and he didn't take a secret mission. I really thought he was going to, and if he had, I think he might have pipped it. Because for some reason he, even though I'd kept him down on points, he just all of a sudden towards the end of the game climbed, and I only just got him. But if he had actually picked the secret mission, I think I would have been a bit in trouble. Um, but yeah, like I feel like secret missions have the ability, if you can get in the right position, if you build to them, like they can really catch you out.
I feel like you have to build a lot towards them though,
Yeah,
because
definitely.
like so my CSM opponent round three, name's Lee. He really good player, really nice guy.
One of my six
He
plus plus
was
boys, right?
yeah, he was his list wasn't really teched into any secret missions specifically, and especially like so once I dropped his Chaos Lord and that was his Warlord, that's kind of like okay, I can figure out now which secret mission you're going to end up doing.
Mm-hmm.
So even when he played it, it was pretty obvious which one he was going to be trying to play, and it's not something that you can hide. I feel like if you tech your list into it and you can really hide what you're trying to do,
Yeah,
then it's super strong, and then it's borderline broken. And
yeah,
then
that can be.
there's almost things. There's other obviously other armies like T Suns for example. If you physically don't have the ability to kill Magnus towards the end of the game,
It just
they have
surges
the
forward.
ability to just win the game. So
That's what happened. I remember you talking about it. That's what happened in your
yes,
practice game against him, right? He just flew Magnus forward, and was
it
it you
was
tried to kill him with
hilarious.
Bellator and
I mean, it was this was a practice game, so it was another game where I was like trying stuff out and going,
yeah,
do you know what? In this scenario, what happens? In that scenario, what happens? All that. So I kind of wasted Shalaxi in this game, and that ended up being my downfall, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, we ended up he ended up doing a secret mission. I was miles ahead on primary, miles ahead on secondary, and he ended up doing a secret mission. But in that same turn where he did his secret mission, because Magnus charged forward and I didn't have much left of an army, he killed so much in that turn, and then I couldn't score any more points, essentially, for the whole game. So all basically everything I could do now was down to stopping his secret mission, and it was obvious which one he needed to do because he didn't have the ability to get any battle line into my deployment zone. Um, he was never going to take me off all of the objectives on the table. He wasn't going to battle shock me. He wasn't going to put me below half strength. All of that, right? So it was obvious which one he was going to do, and also me and my opponent Jakob, he's part of my team. Um, we talked about it, and because it was a practice game, like he just wanted to openly say to me which secret mission he was doing because, like, we're practicing, we're trying to learn how these things work, and yeah, so he ended up doing the secret mission with Magnus having to get to my home objective and take it off me. Now, because he'd killed so many units before that, by the time turn five came along, I physically didn't have enough OC on the table, even if I uppy downied, to take it off him.
Uh,
So I basically needed Be'lakor to do a Hail Mary,
and he didn't.
and he didn't. Right, so I shot him. I re deep struck Be'lakor. Be'lakor was on full health at the time. Shot him and took 4 wounds off, which is even on his hazardous one. That's above average. We know that.
Yeah.
But took 4 wounds off him. Got lucky on the sixes and rolled 3 6s, which went straight through. He
Nice.
didn't have. He had enough CP to do the 4 up for a pain, but he didn't want to. He wanted to save them for like rerolls and stuff.
Yeah.
So then Be'lakor makes his charge in, and he hits him. He wounds him 5 times out of 6, which is insane. Like
For
that
Belly, that's pretty
shouldn't
good.
happen against Magnus, right? And he's on 12 wounds. So with the -1 damage from Magnus, I need 2 hits to go through double sixing, a bare minimum, right?
Hmm.
So out of his 5 saves, what did he do? He failed 2, passed 2, and kept 1 aside. He then re-rolled one of his fails, still failed it. Then he re-rolled one and still failed it with a
Wow.
cabal. And then he had another CP, which he used to 0 damage the last
Yeah,
one.
damage it. Yeah.
So I literally have the 2 left that I need to double six, and I've got a CP to re-roll one of these as well. The first one just rolls a 6. The second one rolls a 1, re-rolls it to a 5.
Oh no.
I was a wound off winning.
Oh, that is gutting.
It was crazy. And then I just looked back and went, one more wound off shooting and he'd be gone.
Did he have
But
to?
yeah.
Did he auto pass his battle shock the following turn?
No, because it was turn 5. It was the end of the game.
Oh, was he already on the objective?
Yeah, he was already on the
Ah,
objective.
okay.
I went
I
second.
was gonna, I was gonna say because if he had turned the battle shock and he failed it, you could have killed him
Yeah,
because of that
yeah, exactly.
shadow.
But
Oh,
yeah, that was literally in turn 5. That was my Hail Mary play. The turn before that, unfortunately, Be'lakor was too busy trying to kill other stuff and get more secondary points, more primary points. But when I say I had next to nothing left, like credit to Jakob, he'd absolutely wiped most of my army before that. So I didn't. It wasn't the case of like I don't feel like I deserved to win that game
yeah.
because he'd wiped out so much of my stuff, and I played super aggro with everything.
Sals and Sons are a bit of a bastard matchup, right? They are a bit. I don't like them. They're quite hard. I think they're quite a bit of a counter to us, right? I think.
That
Uh,
was the only situation where I've played them in Pariah, or actually that was the only game in Pariah that I've played where I felt like my raw killing power of the army wasn't enough to get it over the line. And to be
yeah,
fair, that's one of 2 games in one of my 2 losses in Pariah so far. So that was the case. It wasn't the case in the Black Templar game, but the T Suns game was the only one where it felt like I didn't have enough killing power and it wasn't enough just to get the win.
yeah. All right. Well, I mean, talking about Battle, that's a good segue. So we should get into this tier list, right? So I've done it like this. We've got Be'lakor first, and then we go through the gods, going from Khorne to Nurgle to Sinesh to Zinch, right?
Hmm.
And we've just gone with the boring S A B C D tier. They've self-explanatory. So S means like super good, always take it. And then obviously as we go down, A is going to be pretty good, like you can take it. It's going to be really good in your list. B is you can take it if you build to it. C, it's okay, and then obviously D is just you don't use it, right? So starting with Mr. Bellicor, this is a bit of a controversial one, right? Because there is obviously this big argument at the moment of is he still good? Is he not? And I am personally of the opinion of there isn't a right or wrong answer. It depends on the meta you're playing in, the lists that are going to the event you're going to, or just the list you're playing into if you're playing like casually. And then your list as well. If you build your list to fit him in, he's very helpful. I still think he's got a place. I think Reef for Shades is still really good. And I think the fact that everyone's saying, oh, well, the Great Demon's all got his bubble now, so like he's almost useless. So like, except his bubble is universal, where the others are godlock. So he gives you a bit of flexibility, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I personally think there isn't a right or wrong answer on this. I think you can take him or you don't have to take him. I don't like when people just blanket statement it as he's bad, don't take him. I think for people that maybe aren't sure, test him out. I think he's still got place in list, but I also don't think you have to take him. But then we had this conversation. We're both still very much on the like we're taking him at least for the time being, didn't we?
So
So
for me, it's not just the Wreath in Shades ability. Like I think we've spoken about this before. I heavily rely on his shooting in a
yeah,
lot of
oh,
matches.
his shooting is so underrated.
Like
So
the amount of times I will do Betraying Shades, even on the hazardous version. Just do the hazardous roll. If you've
I
got enough
always
people
do it.
that turn, you can even
Always
re-roll
do
it if you really need to.
it.
But like the 12 shots, the AP3, the strength 6, it's honestly brilliant. And when you combo it with the Great Unclean one, who we'll get onto later, with
Hmm.
the -1 toughness thing, that strength 6 just puts you over that threshold. And so it can even be good against things like vehicles, light vehicles, for chipping a few wounds here and there.
Hmm.
If you need to chip some damage off something, it's got dev wounds. His combat is not as bad as everyone thinks. And so I just think he's overall a great unit, as well as the fact that he offers Reeds and Shades, which, like we're saying, on the right terrain setup, that's going to protect your army.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
It's not just
Recent Shades
about
is.
protecting a
I,
few units here and there, it's about literally
Mhm.
protecting your army.
So I played on that event we were just talking about. I played into Elder with a Wraith Knight, and if I didn't have him, I would have lost big things a lot earlier than I did. So his
Yeah.
Wraith Knight is still good. And the thing is with his combat, it goes both ways. I've had him go into a Rhino and not kill it, but I've also had him go into a Land Raider at full strength and just kill it in one go. So he's got the ability to. Like I wish the Blade of Shadows was D6 +2 and had dev wounds. I think that would be more representative of what it should be, but it's not. But the lethal hits are quite nice because the amount of times I've just rolled like three of them, it's like, oh, great, I didn't even have to wound now. Like it's just gone through. It's AP4 and it's D6 +1 damage, but like average and spiking can definitely pump a lot of damage through.
Mm.
And as we said, like I think not Reef and Shades, Betraying Shades is really underrated. Like there's a lot of shots. Like I said, combined with the Guo being able to then wound like things like Marines that are T4 now on twos because of your -1 toughness, and the dev wounds are just again. I always found his and Shalaxi's shooting were very good at softening up or even doing targets in if you can get quite lucky on the sustained and the dev wounds. And it's actually just nice to have, and especially in the like Eldar or the like Tau with the smaller stuff match up where you can just I need to kill that unit of scourges. Bellacor's shooting will generally pick up a unit of scourges, and then you don't even have to go near them, which is quite useful.
Yeah, I've had a lot of units in the past because I seem to play Chaos armies a lot at tournaments. God knows why. Um, but just like little units, for example, with World Eaters 8 bound, like a small squad of regular 8 bound because they don't natively, I don't think they have an invulnerable save natively, maybe a 6 up or something. Um,
They've got 5 up, I think, didn't
they
they?
got a 5 up natively, okay.
I think they've got 5 up.
But yeah, so like that's an example of someone that you reduce the toughness of with the Great Unclean one and then pop some shots in. You'll maybe kill a couple of them out of the squad of 6, out of a squad
Hmm.
of 3, even. you'll kill majority of the unit by killing two. So, and if you get lucky, you'll kill three.
Yeah.
Um, and then you've got units like Zangor Enlightened, for example, or even regular Zangors for
Yeah.
T-Suns. You're
Use
talking about T-Suns being a hard matchup. If you can wipe a whole squad,
uh-huh.
with just Bellicor shooting, because there's not a lot of in our army that can do that with shooting.
Nope.
So that's definitely like a nice unit to have just for the shooting, and then you've got Reeved on top of that, and his combat is obviously just a nice bonus in some situations.
So yeah, I really like it. I think he's still got a place. Definitely still got a place. So what are we saying? A tier?
I'd say A for him, yeah.
He'll probably so obviously we'll start him here and then the closer to the tier, the higher, and then the further away it'll be obviously the lower. So I don't know where he sits. We'll start putting things in and then we'll rearrange it. But for now, obviously he goes into A tier. I still rate him highly.
Hmm.
Still think he's very good. Right. I think we both have to put our bias aside for this one, right? Because I mean, probably more me than you. Maybe you should take the start on this one. So let's go with the Bloodthirster. I'll let you take this because if I start, I'll just slag him off into the ground.
Right, Mr. BT, Mr. Bloodthirster. Um, yeah, so similarly to Franco, I do have some negative experiences with this guy. Um, Failing, we spoke about it recently. Failing in over two tournaments, 7 out of 10 6-inch charge rolls, um, with re rolls on top of that as well. All the failed ones got re rolled and they still failed. So there's obviously an element of just bad luck there, and it's been the reason why I don't take him anymore. But for sure, post-dataslate and with the Argath upgrade being 20 points, he's now 325 with Argath. I think he's super, super good. He's combined with certain other units. Like this is where we have to take other units into account now with things like the Bloodthirster. He's massively boosted by Renmaster.
Hmm.
He's also massively boosted by Bellicor. So, when certain combinations of units come into an army list, he's going to be even stronger. Taking into account the fact that an army list would have a Ren Master as well, I think he should be going A tier because his sweep attacks absolutely become ridiculous when he's got a Ren Master there. So when you're looking at, what is it, 16 attacks, 14 normally plus 2 with Argath,
16 sweets with Argath, yeah.
strength 12, AP 3 because the Ren Master's there,
Hmm.
damage 3. That is wiping Custodes, that is wiping Terminators,
Yeah.
is wiping anything with 3 wounds. And, we're talking about playing against Black Templars earlier. You can send him into a Sword Brethren squad. They don't have fights first and just blat the whole lot.
Blappen. Yeah, he's and then obviously he's got his relentless carnage mortal wounds at the end, which is saved him on many occasions where he's left something on 2 wounds and he's gone in, or like again a situation I had in the weekend was I went into a unit of Incubi and an Archon, killed them, pulled into a unit of Mandrakes with relentless carnage and then killed them. So yeah, like putting bias aside, he is very good. He's very smashy, and he's definitely one of the most killer units in the game. He definitely suffers with what I think a lot of our stuff suffers with, and that's no real way to get rerolls on him. Because we've all done it where we rolled on his 9 big attacks, we rolled like 4 5 1s, and it happens. It doesn't happen often, but it happens. And like you, I failed a lot of 6-inch charges on that fucker, but like putting the bias aside, he is solid. He's if you want killing power, he's definitely one unit to take. And like we said with the Ren Master, I think Ren Master makes everything Khorne good, right? So he's definitely. I think you're definitely going to see him in a lot of lists, and rightfully so. He's very good. So what we saying above Be'lakor and A tier
I would
or
say
below?
just below Bellicor because at the moment I still think Wreathed overshadows him.
I,
But
I
there's
agree.
other things you can take for damage.
No, I think as much as the first definitely overdoes him in damage, I think Bellacor's flexibility and utility just outweighs it. Um, so yeah, I agree.
And the fact that
Um,
you can just need Bellicor to drop the Thirster in the first place in some situations, like with the Shadow and
yeah,
everything.
'cause I think it's. I mean, I don't know if you got to do it, but I got to do it on the weekend, and it was like using Be'lakor to drop him, and then I done it with the. So I was running the Great Unclean one and Rotagus. So I dropped him. and then I drop the Great Unclean one, and then I drop Rotgus next to the Great Unclean one, and then I drop Plague Bearers next to Rotgus. So it's just a chain.
Longer line, yeah.
And you can do it like drop him, drop the Thirster, drop Blood Crushers, drop Scarbrand, like blah blah blah. So um, the ability to just like create a wall of die is quite nice.
Yeah.
So the next one, I think we're kind of on the opposite side. Like we don't like again, we'll probably be biased, but in the other direction is Mr. Scarbrand. Now I love Scarbrand. I think he's so good. I like him in the first row of the same points base now. I think that's right because I think is there because obviously with the Thirster you're getting your more speed and obviously fly, but with Scarbrand flat 6 damage is just insane. And I think the best part about Scarbrand is when people go, "Oh, what's his damage?" and you just say 6, and they go, "Wait, what? What do you mean 6?" You're like, yeah, 6.
It's like you don't even have to roll for it. No,
Nope, just 6 damage. It's like 3 wounds go through. It's just 18 damage. Like he will, yeah. The guy is absolutely insane. And I think the most underrated part about him is the no fallback ability, right?
massive, absolutely massive.
It's I've won at least 2 games with that ability.
Yeah,
Um, it's really good. Like because obviously back when you could fall back and do actions with certain things, what was it? I can't remember what it was, but I remember my opponent like was able to fall back. They could cleanse if they fell back, and they win the game by like 2 points. And they felt the leadership, couldn't cleanse, and they lost the game by like was it a point or something? And it was like, well, what the fuck? Um, so yeah, I think Scarbrand personally goes above the Bloodthirster.
yeah. That fallback ability is honestly really strong.
And,
I
six
would put him
damage.
above, but they're really super close. Like
Yeah,
Bellacore is above both of them, but
mhm.
Scarbrand and the Bloodthirster, in my opinion, super close together.
Yeah, I feel like anyone could kind of swap them two. I don't
Yeah,
think it's. I think this will just come down to like our personal opinion is we prefer the Scarbrand over the Thirster, but you could easily say again. It just depends on personal preference, really, doesn't it?
yeah, absolutely.
Skull Taker. So, I mean, he's a mini Bloodthirster, isn't he? Really, he's an absolute unit.
Mini Bloodthirster, mini
Yeah,
Shalaxi in a lot of ways.
yeah, because
And
he walks up the characters and just goes, "Yeah, die."
yeah,
Like,
exactly. And the fact that he gives Bloodletters devastating wounds is honestly such a cool bonus.
yeah,
Um, I wouldn't say he's like the best character to lead Bloodletters. I still think
no, he's
there's a
definitely not.
better option out there. And we'll
Hmm.
go on to him in a bit, but I think he's a solid B. Um, it's tough with him, right? Because on one hand, he hits characters like a truck, and
Hmm.
in certain matchups, I've even debated running him by himself. In
Yeah.
this in general, I've debated running him by himself and just now deep striking off of Scarbrand could be cool, and getting him into a character and just to get an assassination point can be
Yeah.
really helpful. Obviously, a bloodletter unit boosts that massively. But even if you don't want to pay the 120 points to have a backup squad for him, he is good in his own right. For 85, it's not bad.
No, I think he's like you said, he's really good at character killing. I think on his own he's not bad. It depends on how many characters you're taking because obviously that's an issue for us sometimes. But I've seen people use him on his own and go into like whole units and just kill them on his own.
Yeah,
He's very capable of it, and for 85 points, like that much damage in like a little model. And as you can say, you can just 6-inch him off one of the greater demons, which is really nice. Um, I as much as I think the dev wounds on letters is nice, I think it's exactly that. I think it's a nice little bonus. I don't think it's if you're having an option, if you're taking one unit of blood letters and you're taking a character, I don't think you take him.
no,
Personal opinion. Um, but I do think you could definitely run him with some letters or even on his own and get some use out of him. I think even on his own he gets use out of him, to be honest.
yeah, for sure. Like even on his own, like you say, he can go into a reasonable sized unit of like Marines or something and just
Hmm.
pick them up.
Yeah.
As even if he goes into a character unit, it's even better. Then he's got his rerolls. Then he's almost guaranteed to pick them all up.
Exactly. He doesn't even need to hit the character. He just goes into a unit with the character and he's just re-rolling hits and wounds, which is
Yeah,
really nice. So
and he's
yeah, I
like,
think
I'm gonna rinse the squad, and then I'm gonna keep the character alive for my next turn.
yep. So I can then re-roll against that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think B's fair for him. Karanak, I think C. I don't rate Karanak that highly.
I would go a little bit further and put him in D.
Yeah.
Personally,
Do you know what? Yeah, we'll go with it. I
he's
don't disagree.
he's such a. I love the character. He's so cool.
Yeah.
Um, I really wish, to an extent, that he was a lone op and not a leader of flesh
Yeah,
hounds.
like a lone up that was quite beefy, like quite high on the damage, but on his own, and maybe had like an aura that would benefit flesh hounds. I think would be better, but I think the
I
fact that he
really
was,
think Khorne need a lone op, honestly. Like,
yeah, I
Khorne are
know,
the only
right?
ones that don't have a lone op, and Karanak
Uh,
would be the perfect
n-
candidate for that.
no, Nurgle doesn't have a lone up either.
That's true, but
Yeah, but yeah, I get what you mean. I would love Karanak to be a lone up. I think that would be a good change. Um, but yeah, because he attaches to the unit, he picks one enemy unit and his unit get lethal hits. It's lethal hits, right? For the until that unit dies, and then if the unit is killed by any means, you
and
get to
then you
repick
pick
another
something
one.
else. So essentially, what you're saying is you pick the target because I think you do it at the start of the game, so
Yeah,
you can
start
do
the
it like
game.
after deployment and stuff, first battle
Hmm.
round. So you'll pick the target that they're going to go for. Him and 10 dogs go rinse it, and then they keep picking other things to go and kill. It's fairly effective, but again, you have to combine it with a red master to make the dogs effective enough. Possibly with Scarbrand being nearby, give them extra attacks,
Hmm.
Bloodthirster for extra hit rolls. All of that combines really well. It's just
Too much
for
in
his
one go.
points cost, he's not worth attaching to 10
That,
dogs.
like,
Like, you'd rather
I,
have 5 more dogs than
yeah,
attaching to 10 dogs.
like flesh. I like flesh hands. I rate them highly, and I think he's just like an anchor on them. I don't think he like the lethal hits is nice. I just don't think it's worth it at
Yeah.
all, especially because it's only on one target, and your opponent, if it's really that important, your opponent can just like avoid it. So yeah, it's a shame because he's one of a couple characters, and we'll get to another one soon, where background and lore and just character of them is really cool. Like he's definitely one of the coolest characters in the background,
For
and
sure.
yet just not very good. So it's just
Yeah.
sad. Um, so this is so I'm not a big Corn fan. Like Corn is way at the bottom for me, but this is genuinely I think my favorite non-named, like as far as rules go, non-named character we have, the old Bloodmaster. I think is
Great
insane.
MB for me, above Skull Taker.
Oh, I would put him bottom of A, just because I think he's the only thing that makes Bloodletters. I mean, we can go B. I think that's fine for him, but
Yeah.
I think he's the only thing that makes Bloodletters palatable for me. Because if you go to any like combat army player or any army or player of any army that has a really good combat unit, like, even like World Eaters or whatever, and you say, here's a character for 65 points that you can attach to one of your good combat units. He gives them +1 to wound and 6 in consolidation. They would snap your arm to take that character. It's
Yeah.
just a shame of what he attaches to because Bloodletters I just think are too expensive and then they just lack. They're quite lackluster. But I think the Bloodmaster is really good. And he actually, for me, at least if I take him, I could be like, okay, do you know what? I can kind of deal with these Bloodletters a bit. But yeah, to be honest, I think he's hamstrung by what he attaches to. And obviously his buffs only affect when he's in the unit. He doesn't get them on his own. So yeah, I think B's fair. But if Bloodletters were to get a lot cheaper, then he probably pumps up a bit.
Yeah, 65 points is a bit of a bargain for what he does. Just the +1 to wound alone is worth 65 points, to be honest
And
with you.
then
And his combat
that
up.
6 inch consolidation is so good. I
It's
think that
it's that extra, the 6 inch consolidation is that additional thing that you look at and go, this guy could be more expensive than 65, and I would probably still take
definitely.
him.
I think he's as cheap as he is probably because of the unit he has to attach to,
Yeah,
right? I
exactly.
really don't like Bloodletters, but yeah, I like him. Skullmaster. I'll let you go on this one.
Mm, a difficult one because
Yeah.
as much as I've always been a disliker of Blood Crushers. I'm going to put that out there. So, all you Corn fans, main me right now. I am not massively keen on Blood Crushers. Like, especially just this edition. Overall, love the lore, love the models, all good. But I feel like this edition, and especially on like UKTC maps, we play a lot on UKTC maps.
Yeah.
If you have units that can't get around terrain and they're moving 10 inches, you're going to struggle to move them
Hmm.
around the table effectively enough. And yes, we have the, what is it called? The up and down stratagem.
Aroma Chaos. Yeah.
Realm of Chaos gets us around these kind of things. Also, the Denons and the Warp is going to get us around these things. So they definitely have abilities in that the Skullmaster can buff. The fact that he makes you take Battle Shock just off charging, really cool. Um, I feel like he could be in the past before Greater Demons got the boost from the balanced data slate. I felt like he could have been a decent unit to take something like Argath on and potentially running like a little three-man Blood Crusher unit. Worked quite well for battle shocking things. If you battle shock it, maybe you can do draft of terror and get rerolls to wound, that kind of thing. And all of that comboed quite well. I just feel like on his own, he's a bit too expensive for what he provides. And
Mhm.
compared to, again, would you rather just have more Blood Crushers? So similar spot to Karanak. But I wouldn't put him as low as D. I think he offers a bit more utility than Karanak does, and definitely his boosts are worth it.
Yeah.
So I'd put him in C.
Ooh. So I'm on the same train as you. As much as the mortals of the blood crushers is nice, I'm not a big blood crusher guy. I think thing is you can play into a good player and they will just hamstring them because especially on UKTC, I think you can really a good player will just stop you getting the most out of them. And if you charge a unit of blood crushers, they're fucked because their combat is not good. It is really not that good. Obviously, Master buffs and Great Demon buffs and all that makes everything good, but I just think overall I agree. I think he makes a unit of 320 points. Like that's a lot of points. I think his buffs are nice. I think he's the dev wounds on the horns is okay, but I think the battle shock thing is really nice.
Yeah,
To combo with Drought of Terror, or even just like not overwhelm with force. What's the one where you take objectives of people?
Storm Hostile.
Or Mostar, that's the one.
Yeah,
So yeah, I agree. I think C just because again, I think his utility, like you don't need to take him to make a unit of blood crushers usable. Um, so yeah, right. Next one. So we had a little bit of a conversation about this first. So where the Ren Master, I think he just is like the secret sauce for Cornless, right? He's what
yeah,
makes Cornless really good. Because +1 strength, AP, and damage as a targetable buff that then stacks is stupid good.
hmm,
And when you're turning damage, like even bloodletters into damage 4 is really good. Or turning the not the great unclean one, the Bloodthirster's sweep into damage 3, damage 4, damage 5 is absolutely fucking bonkers, right?
yeah.
So I think because of it, like in a cornless, I think he sits like S tier, right? Because oh shit, I think he sits S tier in a cornless because I can't even take him up there now. Um, yeah. So, he apparently he's not letting me put him in S tier, so I guess he's going to go A tier. But I think in a corn list, he you need them. You need at least two of them. Um, but if you're taking heavy corn, I think you like in a list where you're mixing and you're just taking a fair bit of corn. I think you can get away with one. Um, but they definitely make things like blood letters more palatable. They make the combat on blood crushers better. They make even though I like dogs, they actually make the dogs be able to punch themselves out of a paper bag because the dog's combat is a bit it's okay. Um, like they instantly just boost everything in corn.
They turn dogs into fiends just by
Yeah,
being
yeah,
there. So
they really do, and it's nuts.
it's honestly brilliant.
Mhm.
I see. I kind of agree with your argument to put him in S tier. Um, but for me, it's just this thing about how far do you keep teching towards Corn before when you take him, for example, before you just go all Corn by the end of it. Like there's definitely a fine line there between mixing Corn into your list and then eventually just going all Corn. And I feel like he encourages that a bit too much, maybe. Um, that's probably the only downside I can say to him. He's super good. He's definitely an S tier,
Yeah.
but it like we say, like the more of him you take, even if you just take one, you're automatically encouraged to go right. I want more bloodletters. I want more flesh hounds.
Yeah.
I want to put blood crushers in because their lance hits can go to 2 damage. Everything just
Mhm.
becomes more effective by being corn with him around. So you then end up with less of the other stuff.
Yeah, so I agree. I think if you're taking them when you're taking a lot of corn or mostly or all corn, you don't just take one if you've got like one unit or two. Like if you take a bloodthirst and unit of bloodletters, you're probably not going to take him. But if you're
Exactly.
taking the bloodthirst and you're taking Scarbrand and you're taking a unit of blood crushers and you're taking a unit of bloodletters, then you're probably going to start taking one and then go from there. But I think when you take them, they just instantly make what they're buffing better. Like
Mhm.
they just make units that aren't fantastic really good. And I think any unit that can do that is just invaluable.
For sure.
It's not my style. I'm not really a corn player. I'm not really a damage dealing player. I prefer to be a bit dancey around, and so for me, it's not my style. But I still really rate them. I've tried them out a few times. Every time I've used them, I'm like, yeah, they're just really good.
We're going to be
Um,
getting to some of the other like quick units, I guess, pretty soon. But looking at the Ren Master again for a minute, basically, for me, I know you rate Fleshhounds really highly,
yeah,
but for me, the Ren Master is the main reason to take Fleshhounds. Like my opinion of Fleshhounds is they're okay, they're fine, they're a decent little trading unit. But compared to things like Flamers, things like Screamers, things like Fiends, those other units just have that extra edge of
yeah,
either better, more survivable, or hit harder. Whereas the Fleshhounds, if you're taking a Ren Master, absolutely flood the table with Fleshhounds as much as you can because they're instantly
yeah.
just a better trading unit than all of those other things. So I think Fleshhounds are largely dependent on him.
Yeah, I mean, so this is where my playstyle comes into it because I don't use them so much for damage. I love to move block and I love to do tagging, and that's the type of thing I do. So that's why I love them because I just think they're really good for it. But also they can skirmish with little stuff. Their damage isn't great, but they can skirmish with little units like anything like T3 and all that or T4. But yes, he definitely just like you said, he turns him into like mini fiends, which is weird because then it's like, why don't you just take fiends? But the thing is, if you're taking him, you're taking a lot of corn, so you're probably going to take a few flesh hounds anyway. But yeah, I rate him. Bloodlet, bloodletters. Oh, I hate these dudes. I really do hate them. Um, right, convince me up or down. That's where I want to put them in top of C for now.
Convince you up or down? Okay.
Yeah,
So the argument for up would be the fact that the Bloodmaster and Skull Taker are up there.
yeah,
Um, Honestly, that's my main argument towards that. I can't, unfortunately, as much as I like the dudes, I've got 20 of them at home. I have never used more than 20, I'll be honest, but I used to use them a lot last edition, and they were
yeah.
really strong last edition. Um, I feel like the Bloodmaster is a reason to take them, the main reason to take them, and otherwise their damage output is just unfortunately belittled by a lot of other things.
Yeah.
We'll be getting on to Fiends later. Fiends do exactly what they do with
If,
speed.
if you can't tell, Byron is a massive fan of fiends, right?
Yes,
Me
yes,
too. Me too. To be fair, and we will get onto them because we'll talk all about them. But thing is, that the bloodletters is at face value, I just don't think they're worth it whatsoever. If you're taking them as like an OC2 thing, play bearers are just better. Damage obviously nowhere near as much, but they can go in and take the punch. Um, and then if you're looking at damage, as we've said, fiends or even flesh hounds with buffs are better. But once you start putting the buffs on them, so Ren Masters, Blood Master, Greater Demon buffs, then actually they become palatable and you can do a lot with them. My problem with that, and it's not how I play the game, I don't like doing this. You're putting all of these buffs onto this one unit, and it's like I've never been a fan of like layering 4 or 5 buffs on top of one unit that's going to go in. And if they go in, because again, 5 inch charges, you don't make them. Like I've failed a lot of 5 inch charges. And if they failed a 5 inch charge and you've just not got the CP or you re-roll it back into another fight at like 4 or less, then they're stuck and then they die because they're T4 with a wound and a 5 up in bond. They do not take a punch. Um, and for 120 points, they just feel bad. Also, they have got the worst version of a reroll ability in the game, right? Because other armies would get reroll ones, or they can reroll all their wounds against a unit on an objective, or if they're on an objective. Why? In what world does they can reroll all their wounds if the unit is under half strength? How is that good?
Not even if it's battle shocked, just half strength. So you can't
Yeah,
even like force a battle shock with a skull cannon
no.
and then get
So
onto
it's just so bad. Like, okay, if you're one-two punching them, if you're sending something in to like crushers and you're battering something, even if you use their mortals to like try and hit something to get it like under half, and then you do the rest with them. But at the same time, then it's just to me, it's just like so they have reroll ones, right? Because it's not often they're going to be going into something that's really weak. Um, yeah, it's just such a crap way to do it. I don't know why they did it like that.
But
Um,
again, when like we talk about comboing with other units, right? So they're strength 5 with the Bloodmasters +1 to wound.
yeah.
If you can get a vehicle -1 toughness with the Great Unclean one, 10
Mhm.
down to 9, and then send them into it, they will do work.
Winning on fours, rerolling ones, and then if you get a Ren Master buff on them, yeah, definitely. And then Scarbrand giving them +1 attack. That's always been another one of my biggest problems. Bloodletters is the attacks. Like
Mm.
they've always been. Even last edition, I was running 30 at one point, and I loved them. But my problem was always they've just not got enough attacks
Mm.
because they hit on threes with 20 attacks. Like that's you're very capable to like miss half of them
Yeah,
sometimes. So
for sure.
yeah, right. Let's move off them. Let's go into Blood Crushers. So oh, this is the weird one. The annoying thing with Blood Crushers is there's so many lists that have done well with them that I feel like you can't really rate them low because they're clearly, and I do rate them. I do think they're good. They're just not my style, right?
Mm.
Also, I think they are very easily stopped by any decent player. Um, but if they don't, the thing is, you rely a lot on their impact hits, right? If they go in and they don't do the impact hits as well as they should, then they're done. Like they are just not doing much.
If their impact
Um,
hits weren't a thing, they'd be D straight
yeah,
away.
they wouldn't you wouldn't even look at them. Their
Yeah,
impact is why you look at them.
yeah.
So I don't know. This is one of the ones where we'll get negative comments on if we don't do this right because so many people rate them highly, so many people like don't, and I want to say I want to put them in the middle, so like B.
I would say top of B for now.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing is you rely on their impact hits so much, and if they go in and their impact hits just don't do it, then they're in trouble. And the annoying thing is any good player will just keep charging them with stuff, even if it's just shit stuff. They will just keep slowing them down.
Yeah.
Um. So, but
I
but
guess we
again,
can caveat this as well, right, with how you and I like to play the game. So I
yeah,
guess a bit of a disclaimer here, right? Myself and Franco, I'm guessing similarly here. We more often than not prefer our units to be more independent
yeah,
rather than relying on loads of stacked buffs. And so
hmm
if you're absolutely like if you're taking a mono list and you're stacking a lot of buffs on things, majority of these units can go one tier up.
yeah,
Um,
definitely,
but then, just because of how we like to play the game, we are, for the most part, going to be judging the units on their own
yeah.
without the buffs. And that's how the tier ranking is going to be.
Yeah, so that's a really good disclaimer. I like that because again, we like you hit the nail on the head. I like to play very spread out. Like my units all boom, 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 boom. I don't really do, and obviously there are certain things I'll do it with. But with the crushes, I think if you're taking a pure corn list, I do think they are your bread and butter of your corn list. I do think you want two big units of them, and by no means are they bad because I don't think they're bad. They're just so swingy and rely on buffs to really do the work you want them to do. But again, in a pure corn list, you can kind of make that work. And even if you're just using them as just being annoying, because they are tough. T7 with 4 wins and a 4 up invent is actually really tough. So if you're even just using them to 6 inch charge or 5 inch charge forward, and then just using their big bases to kind of just hem people in with them. And then if they do damage, they do damage. I mean, that's the point of me looking from just being annoying with them.
Mm.
They're actually quite useful because when I was running, I was earlier in the year, I was taking a unit of one in my list, like 6 of them in my list without anything else. And they were there to just, right, I need that unit to not, because they can't move through walls. And they would just go in and block units in. Or even just like put some mortal wounds on something so I could finish it off with something else or
Yeah.
that. But
Similarly to you, I could say like I used to use a squad of 3 just as
yeah,
like a little auxiliary damage dealer as well as to move block stuff because
yeah,
their massive bases really help with that. For a
yeah.
long time, I was running when Fiends were still 130 points. I was running one squad of them and
Yeah,
one squad of Blood Crushers, and they were kind of my auxiliary damage dealers, but for fulfilling two different roles. The Blood Crushers would usually deep strike in or ingress in and either move block something or help clear my backfield a little bit, like a threat to the changeling, perhaps.
yeah,
while the fiends were my go through walls, go help give someone -1 to hit, go clear up some marines or something.
Yeah, no. Cool. Flesh hounds. So whenever I talk about these, other people that like other demon players or people that may like dabble in demons always kind of give me the sideways look because I always really big them up and they're like, but why? Because they don't do loads of damage. And it's like, again, this is the point of view from a player that isn't about damage. Like I've never liked. Maybe it's just not doesn't fit me, right? I don't like raw damage. Like I'll take a unit or units that can do damage on their own. And with flesh hounds, they are very good candidates for the Ren Master. Um, but I just like the speed on them. I like the bases on them. They are very good. I use them a lot to move block. I like them because they're 70 points. They move 12 inches. They're just really handy to have. And also the free heroic on them is actually pretty good. To either protect lesser units or just to again just gum up objectives is also really really handy.
Yeah, for sure. That free heroic. Everyone listening to this, do not sleep on Flesh Hound's free heroic.
Yeah,
Honestly, it stops your stuff getting locked up.
yeah,
It stops things on objectives getting locked up really
hmm
easily.
yeah. It really does. And again, I've used it to keep primary. My opponent's charged something that's on an objective just to knowing it wouldn't die or enough of it wouldn't die. So then free heroic with the dogs. Now I'm back in primary in OC possession of the objective again. So I think they're a weird unit. They're a utility piece, right? They're a piece you use to do different auxiliary jobs. You're not taking them to smash damage. You're taking them to tag. You're taking them to block. You're taking them to just be annoying. Use them for utility jobs. And also 70 points to do secondaries with the speed that they have now in Pariah is invaluable in my
Yeah,
opinion.
for sure.
What do we want to say?
So I would say either top of C or bottom of B.
Oh.
I'll leave it up to you which one.
I will go bottom of B. I like them a lot. But yes, looking at it from an overview point, I see the bottom of B, so we'll go bottom of B. Oh, skull cannon! I've been excited for this one because I'm really hyped about the skull cannons now. I know they only took 10 points, but I think that 10 points is enough to make them like a unit to look at.
Yeah.
I think the battle shock trigger has really good potential. And though their shooting's not,
Craft of Terror.
yeah,
Let us use
exactly.
this stratagem properly, GW. Skull cannons help with this.
The thing is, right, it's a typical demon thing. It's, oh, have this buff that everyone else can get access to, but you've got to jump through a hoop to get it.
Yeah.
It's like the +1 AP is good, but the rest of it, I mean, the hundreds and hundreds of games of 10th I've played now, the amount of times I've used full drought of terror, I could probably count on two hands. Um, so they help. Obviously, change casters do it as well, and then also bile pipers help, but these guys they're what 48-inch range. I think they're
The
48-inch
key
range.
difference with these guys is they can do it to anything.
Yes, exactly. 48-inch range. They can reach anywhere on the board. You
Yeah.
can drop them in. Um, they've got a little bit of combat to them as well if you want to push them forward. Their shooting's okay. What is it? D6 +2, 9, 1, 2, and,
Yeah.
and blast. So they can do some wounds as well. And then obviously with the mortals, if they fail the battle shock, this is where you're using your shadows to your full advantage. But in a Khorne list, getting reroll wounds because of drought is just super strong. But even outside of a Khorne list, I think they're pretty good in any kind of list, just one or two of them, and they'll also keep opponents honest, right? Because the amount of times I'm pretty sure you'll get it as well when your opponent goes, "Oh, you've not really got anything to worry about shooting." I'm like, "Well, I got Bellica who's 18." They're like, "Okay, cool, I just do what I want." So to then have a couple units that you can put around and go, "No, they've got this and this," even though they're not like the best shooting unit in the world, your opponent or any decent opponent will then go, "Yeah, okay, if they spike, they can actually kill a unit of Marines. So I don't really want to deal with that." Um, so yeah, I think they've definitely got a place at 95. I like them at 95 a lot.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think? I don't know.
I would say just behind Flesh Hounds. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if they had another point of AP, they were AP 2 flat. I think they would
AP
definitely
two
be.
flat would be, they'd probably be towards top of B then,
Yeah,
because
I
I feel
agree.
like the AP one is just that thing, like you get torn with the choice of, okay, you're trying to use them to get your draft ready, right?
Hmm.
But at the same time, you might need to use draft on them to make them AP2. It's just
Yeah,
really frustrating.
yeah, because cover, like, again, that's where you look at it from the point of view of you're not so much taken to do damage, because if you're shooting at Marines with a cover save, you're not going to kill that many.
All you're
But
trying to do is get that battle shock test on them.
yeah, exactly. So, um, we only put this thing on here because we could then use it to because it's in the index, but we're not even going to talk about the fucking blood throne because it's shit. It goes in D.
It's to fill out the D category.
Yeah, it's exactly so we can like make it look a bit even. Right, we got through Khorne finally, and I mean I feel like even though we spoke a lot about it, it's my least favorite part of everything, and I assume it's close to probably your least favorite part of everything.
Nah, not my favorites.
No.
My favorite god of the lot is Zinch, and then
I didn't realize that we have the same favorite god.
oh
I
really?
love it. Yeah, I'm a Zinch boy,
Yeah. So
but also a Nurgle boy as well. I love a Nurgle.
for me, it's Sinesh second, but
Yeah,
Nurgle and not far behind Sinesh. Like I do love Nurgle, and
yeah.
then Khorne, I would say by quite a long way at the bottom.
Yeah, and we're exactly the same. So Zinch sits at the top for me, then it's Nurgle, and it is a close second. And then I also love Slanesh. I think Slanesh isn't that far behind Nurgle either. And then it's a massive drop the Khorne. I am not a Khorne fan, to be honest. It's just too generic.
It's just the they do one thing and they do it super well, and that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's just I'm a big angry red demon, and I'm gonna hit you with my big weapon.
Yeah, and
Right.
and I have horns.
And I
The
have horns.
stereotypical satanic demon, right?
Exactly. It's like they are literally they're the devil. Oh,
Yeah,
sweet, awesome. Right here, this is where we get interesting. So, Mr. Great Unclean One. So, we're going to talk about it from the point of view of the first one you take is always going to have the endless gift. If you're taking a Great Unclean One without the endless gift, you should just give up and not play the faction anymore because it's just silly. Yeah, but come on, who does that, right?
100%. You're right.
So we're going to look at it when we're talking about all the great. I should have said this at the beginning. When we're talking about the generic greater demons, we're looking at the first one you take. And I mean, there's more of an argument now to take the enhancement on all of them because of the shadows. But I feel like the Great Unclean Man and the Lord of Change, you never took the first one, if you even took any more after that, without the enhancement. The other two, you flip flopped. I think definitely Argath and Soul Stealer have more say now, but you always took a Great Unclean One with the Endless Gift. The first one.
Always. Even if it was only on a 5-up for a pain, it's worth
Yeah.
it.
But now it's always a 4-up. So now
Yeah.
it's 100% worth it. And he didn't go up. So I
Big
I
boy.
I think he goes definitely not behind him. I think he goes. God damn it! The Red Master stuck himself. Right, you can sit there for now. I think he goes in S tier. I mean, I'm willing to be talked down to A tier if you can, but I think innately he goes straight up into S.
I honestly think he's our best unit now.
Yeah,
So
I
I'm not
100%
really, I'm not willing to talk him down to A tier. He doesn't deserve it. He
agree.
is the amount of army lists that look at him and go, "I'm just going to have to ignore that all game,"
Mm-hmm.
and then only if you actually force them to deal with him, they will
Yeah,
try and deal with him, and it's
yeah,
going to
because
take their whole army for 2 turns to try and kill the guy.
because if you just slam him into their face, then they have to deal with him, right?
Exactly.
And and also, which is quite underrated, is if you do a recover asset and you've got him in the air, if you've picked him up, there is no reason you can't drop him 3 inches away in your opponent's deployment zone to then recover assets. Because if you're, especially if you're pushing forward with things like fiends, blood crushers, other greater demons, they're not really going to have the resources to then go and deal with that. And then if you've got a lone up doing it in the middle and then say play bearers at the back, like you're going to get your 6 on recover more than likely.
Yeah.
But like you said, I found that I can look apart the board more likely the midfield objective that's generally closer to your home objective or in the safest place, and you go right. I just want to hold that all game, and you just shove him forward. And
Yeah.
on the weekend, I did that pretty much every game, at least to start with. And most opponents will go, nah, it takes too much to dedicate to him. I'm not bothering. And okay, you can out OC him, that's fine. But then that's where rapid ingress with things 6 inches away because of his bubble is quite handy. Like I try and position him on an objective that if my opponent can get to the objective, they're probably only just going to tip the edge of it. And then
Yeah.
that gives you spots to drop, say, play bearer 6 inches away or using his bubble. And then you've instantly taken it back. It's a nice little trick on him.
Yeah.
Also, don't forget he's got a pretty good flamer if your opponent's chucking like tough as free stuff at him, like basic like eldery stuff or things like that. Because
If
that
someone's
flamer,
trying to out OC him on his objective, and it's like a 5-man unit of toughness 3 1 wound things,
yeah,
he'll kill it on Overwatch.
yeah, you just D6+3 it in the face, and then it's like cool, it's dead. Give me something else. And if you're
Yeah,
waiting another unit, fine. He's doing his job by just forcing you to waste these small units that you want to be using to score points.
yeah.
So, and there's, I mean, we all have those games where we just can't roll 4-ups, and I've had games where he has fallen over a bit too easy just because I couldn't make a 4-up. But I've also had games where my opponent has put the best weapons they have in the entire, like in their entire book, into him, and have just wasted them. And I'm like, cool. Now I have another turn of, I don't know, Shalaxi doing something or Rotagus doing something. So yeah, I just don't see how you don't rate him as like our best unit. For points, I mean, I think pretty much everything Nurgle points per wound value is really valuable anyway. But he's just, I think in the game, there is nothing more valuable for their wounds per points than him.
I feel like competitively speaking, in a lot of my tournament situations, I've since I've been using him, I've done 2 tournaments 5-0, 2 tournaments 4-1,
Mhm.
and he's probably been a massive contributor to the reason for that extra level up for an extra game win. Like in some situations, he sits on the deployment, he rushes forward, advances forward first turn, gets
Mhm.
on that middle objective right in the middle of the map. If he gets far enough with his advance and he gets lucky, cool, the opponent's not getting on that objective.
Yep.
And if he does that and he sits there while I've got Be'lakor within 6 of Shalaxi sat on the opposite end of the table, you're not taking me off those 2 objectives. So I'm getting natural
Nope.
shadow. And I feel like he is just a ginormous contributor to that. The idea that you can put this immovable object onto an objective and the opponent can try and shift their whole army into it. I used my Necron game as an example over the weekend. The only thing that my opponent could put into the Great Unclean one was the Void Dragon, and he sent him in, and eventually the Great Unclean one killed the Void Dragon.
Yeah, the I learned this the really fast. So I had a game against Crons when I started using him a while ago, when he first got the points drop, and my opponent sent Nightbringer into him, and I knew my opponent very well. He's a very good friend, and he was like, the Nightbringer, he might not have him now, but he'll take him to like barely anything, and then he'll kill him next turn. And no, the Grand Clean one killed him in 3 turns because
Yeah.
he was and he was just like, what the fuck? And then didn't you lose Shalaxi to him over the weekend as well? Did you lose?
Uh, yes, I did. Yeah,
Because you
yeah,
played
that's
another, you
crazy.
played the mirror match, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, because
yeah,
Shalaxi only, for context, Shalaxi only had 2 wounds left at the time, but he ended up sweeping Shalaxi and killing her, and then
even better.
and then um oh no, sorry, no, no, it was the other way around. My Shalaxi killed his Great Unclean one, and then the Great Unclean one exploded, killed Shalaxi.
That's even better. But
Yeah,
yeah, no, I just think he's just it's just because you can just go right. I really need to hold this for the whole game, or at least for the next couple of turns. Boom, put him there. And against certain armies, he's just he just can't you can't get rid of him. And then he's also a mental thing because it's like so many people look at that and go, I'm not dealing with that. I just
I
can't
can't
be
be
able to deal
bothered.
with it. And I've had that so many games where I'm like, you probably could deal with it if you threw enough into it, but then you're wasting a lot of units into him. And my opponent just like, no, just I don't care, and just
It's
gone away.
way
And I'm like,
too tough bottom line for 260 points.
I think he's insanely valuable. I couldn't even count how many primary and secondary points that guy scored me by just sitting in one spot.
He single handedly makes Shalaxi look better at 450. Like him being 260 absolutely offsets the fact that she's 450 for me.
Then you mean he makes her look worse at
No,
450?
no. I think if you take her and him and Shalaxi in a list together, him being only 260 offsets the fact that she's 450.
Oh yeah, so it kind of like balances out because you would
Yeah,
expect him. Okay, yeah, I mean I get that, and I like that combo. Like one of my best lists since of 10th was running Belly, him, her, and then I also had a Lord of Change in there as well. Um, and I feel like the problem is I feel like because you want more small stuff now, you probably limit it to just him, her, and Be'lakor. But
yeah,
I think them that's still a solid set of monsters. It really is. I just don't see how you don't take him.
yeah.
Um,
It's amazing.
yeah. Rotagus, I love Rotagus. We've had a couple conversations. You've spoken about taking him, right? And I mean,
Yeah.
he's probably going to get dropped from my list, but not because I don't like him, just because I want to move in a different direction. But I
Mm.
really rate him, really highly rate him.
I think this is all on how much you value the half OC half movement
It's
because
really good.
like his damage, it's better than a regular Great Unclean one. But that's not what you take a Nurgle model for. You take a Nurgle model for the tech usually. So like with the Great Unclean one being how ridiculously tough he is,
Mhm.
I think the half OC half movement is game changing in a lot of games.
It really
And
is.
like the fact that you're because advances actually add to your move characteristic, you're halving that as well.
Yep.
So guess what? You're not moving very far, even if you can
Nope.
advance and charge. So
He's
I would put him in A, somewhere in A. I'm not quite sure where. Um, I do think he is depending on the list, better than Scarbrand and the Bloodthirster.
Yeah, so his damage cannot be underrated. From someone who's used him a fair bit now, I've had him just, but I've had him kill land fortresses and land raiders from full. Okay, I've rolled well. My opponent's not rolled too hot, but it can happen. Him with plague drone support is actually really good.
Yeah,
Um, the flat four damage on the big smacks is really good, and damage two sweeps as well is nice.
damage two
Um,
sweeps is underrated because the
yeah,
fact that even Be'lakor doesn't have that and he does.
yeah, exactly. And then also he actually ups the damage of other stuff. Like I've had so here's a funny
The
story.
damage big carries.
I ran a mono Nurgle list to a RTT about a month ago, and I had played. So he put his. I was playing against Black Templars, and was against Helbrecht and the dudes. Is it Crusaders? It's Crusaders, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I'd already killed a few of them, but I had his buff on them. I had -1 toughness on them, and I also had their plague drone rerolls. And I had a unit of plague bearers with the Scrivener, and I rolled so many sixes, so obviously lethal and sustained, and they wiped out. I think it was 4 Crusaders and Helbrecht because of like the rolling loads of sixes and then also the +1 damage. So like his +1 damage really is good. Overall, if you're taking a Nurgle list, you 100% take it. He's always taking a Nurgle list.
Yeah.
Um, and then also his shooting is actually pretty good. The 2d6 strength 7 -2 1 damage dev wound flamer, like that Overwatch threat again into armies like that are toughness 2, but even things that are toughness 3 that you then -1 toughness with it because of the ground clean one is really handy.
Yeah, for sure. It's the flamer being dev wound. I know it's only one damage, but dev wounds is just effective, isn't it?
Everyone. Yeah,
There's an argument to say it's not as good as the regular ground clean one because he's just straight D6 +3. That you've got the
yeah,
reliability there of the +3, but the extra strength and the dev wounds is really nice,
yeah,
and the half OC half movement ability is just disgusting.
yeah. I mean, he's not better than the endless gift ground clean one, but
No.
he's probably better than a normal ground clean one, right?
For sure,
Um,
he's better than a normal one. Like the 6-up Fiona Pain is nice, but you just have to look at it and go like, how many 6-ups is that going to make a difference for? And
exactly.
at what point are you better off just having two more wounds? And that's something to point out. He does have two more wounds
Those are two more
than a
wins.
regular one.
Yeah, I rate him highly. I think he's very good. So this is probably the first part of this tier list where I actually get legitimately sad and upset. Because they massacred my poor Epidemius from ninth. Well, actually, from the 8th book to the 9th book, and even worse into 10th. So, this is like Karanak as well, where really cool lore. He's generally one of my favorite small characters in the lore, but his tabletop profile doesn't quite represent it. Saying that, he's not terrible, right? So he makes a unit of playbearers 4-up him, give him a 4-up in run, and I rate playbearers. Is he worth the 85 points to do that? I don't know, but I mean, it makes a unit of playbearers really tough. And then if you want, more CP in your list, and you're taking a lot of Nurgle or mono Nurgle list, to take him to kill 7 dudes up 7 or more dudes a turn is not, or a battle round isn't bad to get an extra CP.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
mean,
he's solid. I think the he's relatively cheap, and just like you say, the 4-up invuln on Blade Bearers in itself is good, and his combat attacks aren't bad. Like, we'll refer back to that Demon Mirror that I had. He finished off Bellicor.
Yeah, I remember you
So,
saying he was at the middle.
yeah,
Because he's damaged too, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so
Damage 2 with like D6 plus 3 attack, something silly like that. So it's not bad.
they've just taken the Nurgling attendance and just rolled it in,
Yeah.
didn't they?
Yeah.
So,
Nurglings are 2 damage.
yeah,
Hooray!
they're good damage. Woo. I just get upset because I remember the good old tally days, and I just think they've completely ruined the tally because I miss the old times where you could just make all your Nurgle shit really fucking strong because you've killed like 5 units.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I like him. What do we say? B tier.
Uh, if he's going B, he's going to have to be bottom of B.
Yeah, I agree. But I think he's got again. I really highly rate Plague Bearers. We'll get to it in a minute. And I think he makes Plague Bearers better. And he's out of all the characters you can attach to Plague Bearers, he's one of the only ones I would consider attaching to them.
Yeah.
Um, Slimex. I'll let you start on Slimex because I have a very bad opinion of Slimex. So
Oh, my favorite slug. I absolutely love this model. Ever since he's released, I think it was the perfect release for a Nurgle character. To have this dude that gardens for Nurgle and rides a snail that has
hmm
a little Nurgling attached to it to motivate it to move. That is just insanely cool.
yeah,
And he's even got shears rather than like a traditional combat weapon. Like,
yeah.
awesome, awesome model, awesome unit. I've actually used my one is magnetized to the snail itself. The herald is magnetized to the snail, so his alternate build is basically a poxbringer. I used to use him as a poxbringer, and he
Right.
just
Okay.
essentially sits on this giant rock, and he looks
Nice.
like, he's chewing the bone in his mouth and everything. He just
That's
looks
really cool.
epic.
Yeah.
Um, love the unit. I really wish that it wasn't so expensive.
hmm
If he was a bit cheaper, if he was maybe 100 points, I think he'd be taken a bit more often. When you look at his defensive profile, he is a mini demon prince. As
He's as tough as a Demon Prince, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Defensively, he's as tough as a demon prince, but his output is just not there. He moves 6 inches. He's got to move around terrain. He's got so many issues with him, and the fact that he's got to move around terrain whilst also making terrain pieces Shadow of Chaos. I feel like since the Greater Demon change has come in, that effect has just died down even
Yeah.
more, and that's
100%.
put him down a tier, unfortunately.
So I never rated that ability. Like on paper, it sounds cool, but then you look at a lot of terrain. Obviously, right, GW style terrain is probably more possible,
Yeah.
but we look at a lot of things from UKTC point, and it just wasn't viable. It just
No,
didn't
so
work.
from a UKTC point, at what point are you going to be able to land a monster wholly within a terrain feature, right?
Well, no, he doesn't have to be wholly on the terrain. He just has to touch it. But the units that drop down have to be wholly on it, right?
That's
Is that what you meant?
Yeah,
That's what you meant.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah. So
Yeah.
how
So
often are you going to get to, for example, drop a great unclean one onto a terrain feature, or
never, unless
even
you. Yeah. No.
even a squad of plague bearers? Like, that terrain feature's got to be relatively big to get 10 plague bearers onto it.
Yeah. So I never rated that ability, and the bubble change, like the ground clean one or the great demon changes killed it, which I was glad. He also did he give once per game free heroic to beasts, and then does he give him reroll advance and charge?
Let's be real. That should be a multiple combinations of abilities there, not what it
Yeah.
actually is. That should
Nope.
be advance and charge, reroll advances, reroll charges, and heroic for free all the time.
Yes, I agreed.
Even then, he would still be C tier.
Yes.
Like,
I also think so for me, one of the most annoying things for us at the moment is beasts. Is I like beasts as an individual thing. I think a unit or two is worthless. I think if you could take them in threes, he'd have a little bit of a place. I just don't think he does enough. So I put him in D
yeah,
personally.
I agree. I think
Probably above Karanak.
he goes above Karanak because of the relatively low points cost and how much of an absolute unit he is to remove.
Yeah, because he's super tough. He's T10. He's got what nine wounds.
I think he's got 10 wounds.
10 wounds and a 4-up
Yeah,
in one. So yeah, he's a beast to get rid
and
of.
his
He's
3-up
combat.
armor save. and OC2.
Yeah. So I just think the beast limit at the moment doesn't help, and I think his rules just feel a bit hamstrung.
If him and beasts as a unit could go through walls, that might help them a little bit. But again,
Yeah.
it's not enough. We're not saying that's enough to put him up to C
No.
tier, unfortunately.
No. The Scrivener, I really, really rate the Scrivener. I think he gets way too much hate. So many people shit on him, and I don't think it's fair. I think the plus OC is really good, and then the sustained is a bonus, which is nice, but you're not taking them for that. I just think the OC, like, I don't think you take three of them, but
No.
one of them, if you're taking like multiple units of play bearers, which I definitely think you can,
Mhm.
if you've taken one of them, just allows, because how many times will you get a 3-inch deep strike and you can only get, say, three dudes on the objective?
Yeah.
So being able to just get three of them on there, well, I mean, that's 9 OC now. Like, unless your opponent's got 10 10 OC2 models on the objective, like, you're going to take it.
Yeah.
And I just think that's really handy, just as a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
Um, and also, if your opponent charges them and doesn't kill all of them, he then has a little bit of, like, the sustained hits is nice to go with the lethal. But again, you're not taking him for the combat because play bearers aren't a combat unit. It's just a nice bonus. But I
It's the
like,
OC mostly that we're taking him for.
yeah, so I like him. I think I think he goes above Epidemius. I don't. Thing is, I do find it hard to put him higher than that because the other units just have a bit more. Like, obviously, the damage from the two Khorne guys is really good, and then the utility from the other Khorne bits are just a bit too good. But I
I
think
feel
he
like the
definitely,
value that they provide to the army is just a bit more everything else.
yeah. So we happy with that? Just above
Yeah.
Epi.
Yeah.
Um, Poxbringer, I think bottom C.
Yeah.
If even that, because he gives them crit hits on fives, which is okay, and then is it a -1 battle shock aura? It's okay. It's all right. It's
Yeah.
not
No,
anything.
if he was forcing battle shock, like
Yeah,
Mr. Sloppity does, then he'd be better.
yeah. The best use I can think of him. So he's 55 points now. Obviously we have our character issues because we take so many characters, but there is a little bit of an argument to take him as just a small 32 mil base that you drop into like your opponent's deployment zone for Locust.
Yeah.
And then also he's T5, 5 wounds, 5 up in 1, 5 up for no pain. So your opponent has to actually dedicate something like substantial into him. And there might be an argument for him if you're taking, if you want just a small character to do something like a smaller like an action, or if you're taking Locust as a fixed, he's got a bit of a use there. But for 55 points, he's not bad for that. But attaching to character is not great.
I feel
Attaching
like
to
he's
character
a
is not great.
nice little replacement for what Nurglings used to do.
Yeah,
So we would use
100%.
Nurglings as our little locust unit, or
Yeah,
I guess they can still engage, but just like action
it's
unit.
still great. Yeah, yeah.
So
It's
he's
just
a
the
nice little
assassination.
replacement for that.
Yeah. The Bile Piper, I don't
I
know.
think he goes just above the Poxbringer.
I think he's better than the Boxbringer
I think he's just above the Poxbringer. I
because of the battle
honestly,
shock.
I can't even remember exactly what he does. This is very
So
bad for me.
he gives play bearers +1 move, and does he give him a reroll advance? I think as well, and then forces battle shocks.
Yeah,
Um, in the fight phase, he forces a battle shock,
in the fight phase,
which
yeah.
is not terrible, except you realize you don't generally want him anywhere near where the fights are going on, right?
So again, I think the problem is plague bearers, right? They're not going to massively benefit from something being battle shocked. So
No,
you don't really want him leading plague bearers. Instead of battle shocking something else, you would rather just have the Scrivener with the plague bearers and give your own plague bearers +1 OC and boost their combat
exactly,
that way. But
exactly.
if you're using him to battle shock something else, just by being within 6 of it, because you don't even have to be in combat, it can be useful as a cheaper alternative to a skull cannon to try and trigger
Mhm.
drop somewhere.
Yeah,
But unfortunately, he's not going to be doing that while leading the thing that he should be leading.
cool. And that's the problem that the Poxbringer has as well, I think.
Yeah,
I hope if we do, like, let's not even go into the rumors, but if we do get a codex, I really hope he then gets like what cryptex have, because they give scarabs a +1 OC within 6. I would love them to do that for Nurglings because it's
yeah,
in, it would um be consistent with buffs he's given to Nurglings in the past. So that would be nice.
Yeah, what was it?
Um,
Nurglings and Great Unclean ones he used to buff.
Nurglings and Ground Clean ones, yeah, he used to
Yeah.
buff. Did he used to make them? Was it better in combat? I can't even remember now, to be
Yeah, I
honest.
think it was like +1 to advance and charge or something.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Player bearers, I love these. They are genuinely my favorite battle line unit.
I
Um,
think they're S tier, mate. I think you're being kind by putting them low.
yeah, do you know what I agree. I agree. I think they are generally. I just think the T5 2 wins 5 of win button is, yes, things can deal with them, but the things that want to be dealing with infantry don't like dealing with them, right? Because generally a lot of things that have a lot of shots aren't damage 2, they're damage 1. And like for example, I used to run a lot of them and pink horrors as a combination, and I played into tower a fair few times, and I was finding what's the guys with the shotguns that
Breaches.
jump out of the devil breaches? They kill pink horrors in a go. You don't split,
Yeah.
but they don't. They do not kill, and I know this for a fact now. They do not kill plague bearers in one go.
No, because they don't wound
Um,
on twos.
Nope. And they are only damage 1. So play bearers, I think, are just for 110 points, that their points per wound value is so good. I think there's very few battle line units in the game that have as much value for their toughness as they are.
Hmm.
And
Well,
then
you look
stick
at the kind of chaotic battle lines as an example, as a counterpoint, right?
yeah,
Look at Zangors, look at Poxwalkers. None of them are anywhere near as tough as them.
no.
And those are still units that are taken as fundamental battle line units, action units for their OC, all of that.
Yeah.
I genuinely think we have the best chaotic battle line in the game right here.
Well, with play bearers, yeah. Do you know what? I find it hard to disagree. Um, they don't do mass amounts of damage, but that's not their job. They sticky objectives for free, which is, and they've got the good kind of sticky, right? Because
Yeah,
theirs happens at the end of the command phase, not the beginning.
yeah.
So they sticky at the beginning of the game. And OC2, they're just so good. I really, really like them. Like I every time I build a list, and obviously I've been sending you a lot of lists recently. My list starts with 3 units of them, and then I might talk myself down to 2. But I don't even feel comfortable with 2. Like I ran, well, how many? I think I only ran 1 on the weekend, and my
Yeah.
one of my biggest takeaways was I need more play bearers again. Um, and now that you can use your ground clean one to just spit them out is really good.
Yeah. They're
It's
so
really good.
great. They're great for sealing objectives. Their
Yeah,
damage is honestly slept on.
yeah.
Um,
You know what? The ability to just pump out like on a good roll a good amount of lethals is actually not terrible.
yeah.
Um, and they're
When
minus
you're
one
throwing
as
20
well.
dice or
So,
something with lethal hits,
mhm.
they are also a decent candidate for draft to increase their AP to 2 as well.
Yeah, definitely.
It's really not bad. And the
No,
fact that they hit with threes now for a fundamental combat unit is a nice little bonus as well.
I just think they are really tough, and then they do the other bits like they do. I feel like they're the most rounded of all of them, of all the battle line units, right? Because bloodletters they punch decent, but they can't take a punch back. Not letters, demonettes they can punch ish. They can definitely not take a punch. The horrors can take a punch. They can't deal anything.
Yeah.
Whereas plague bearers can take a punch. They can deal a bit of damage. Like they do everything and like enough to warrant like being half decent at everything, whereas the others don't.
So
So
when you consider the fact that a plague bearer is a point more than a demonette,
I know.
what were they thinking when they put those points costs out there? Because
I don't know because
genuinely,
what
a
did plague
prop,
bearers start? What did plague bearers start at? Were they 140? Like were they the same price as pink horrors?
I think so.
And then they went down to 125, and then I liked them at 125. I was like, oh, I'll take them at 125. And
Yeah.
then they went down to 110 in
Yeah.
January, and I was like, okay, now they are auto take, and
I think
now
they
they
might have
are
started at 130 actually.
at
So I think
130.
they were always the cheapest, I believe.
Yeah,
Um,
because yeah, because well, I think with Demon it's 130 as well. They started at 130 as well, right?
no, they started at 140.
No, are you sure?
Yeah, yeah, I'm pretty sure Demonet started at 140. I
Because
remember them being more expensive than Plague Bearers when they came out.
and fucking Bloodletters were 160, right?
Yeah.
Who the hell thought that was a good
Who wrote
idea?
those points? I remember Demonets coming out at 140 actually distinctly because I remember talking about it when they were releasing the datasheet leaks. And I thought, do you know what? If Demonets are like 90 to 100 points, plus a Transweaver is like 40 points,
Hmm.
that's going to be a solid unit.
Yeah, they would. No.
for combat. Obviously, GW had completely different plans, and they came out. It's like, yeah, Transweaver 70, Demonettes 140. It's like what I thought was going to be like 140, 150 points is now 210.
Yep. See, I had the same thing with Blue Horrors. I was like, when I saw the data sheet, I was like, why am I not going to take 60 of these? Tell me why I'm not going to take 60 of these. And then they come out 125. I was like, that'll be why. um, but yeah, so Plague Bearers, I genuinely think are all I take. In my opinion, I love them. They're my type of unit.
Yeah,
Um, speaking of what used to be auto take, they are not no longer auto take, obviously, but I still think they have a place. Old
yeah,
Nurglings.
yeah,
They still score engage. They still score behind. They still do so. Banners, raise banners, which is in one of the not primary mission, yeah, primary missions, right?
yeah,
Um, they still score you that because it's not an action; it's just a battle line unit on an objective
yeah,
that you control.
yeah,
So obviously, you've got to have something else on there. So they still have a place. They've still got their -1 to hit aura, which is nice. They infiltrate, so you can block infiltrators with them. You can use them to block scout, and because they can't do actions anymore, you don't feel as bad just putting them out in front to block scout and then dying. Um, and just cheap screens as well. Like I just think they are. I still think a lot of people would kill to have a unit for 40 points to do the job that they can do.
yeah, for sure.
And I know you're quite big on a unit of 6, right? Or you was anyway. I don't know if you still are.
I still am. Yeah, I am. This is basing off the fact that I stick to the list that I ran at Hertfordshire GT.
Yeah.
6 of them to infiltrate in and move block scouters, move block any fast moving stuff that can't fly. And let's be real, there's a lot of that in the game now. There seems to
Mm-hmm.
be a lot of like combat type, Death Star type units that want to get up the table and smash your face in quickly, but they can't fly.
Yep.
So if you infiltrate 6 Nurglings in front of them, they're going to have to deal with those Nurglings first, and it's something that you've got there in case the opponent goes first. And like we talked about Flesh Hounds fulfilling a similar role. I think basically anything with an oval long base fulfills a similar role.
Mm-hmm.
Seekers can also do the same thing,
Yep. Seekers.
but the advantage for Nurglings is you get in there before a scout move and you
Yep.
really push the enemy back.
Yep.
Um, and they also allow you to play mind games with the opponent's infiltrators as well, especially if you get to deploy them first. You put
Mm-hmm.
them on one flank, slap them there, the opponent can't infiltrate there. That's where you don't want the opponent to go.
Yep.
So you just leave them there. You're 70 points worse off, but that's fine because you don't care. And they're reasonably tough to remove. I've even had them first turn charge things just to lock them up and then not die.
So at LGT last year, when the Index Khorne Warrior War was a thing, I played it into a pretty good player round one, and I think I had 4 units of Nurglings, so I just lined 3 of them up at the front. Went first. I relied on going first. Went first and just slammed into it, and he took cleanse deploy, and I just stopped him turn one, and it got me the game. I was just like, yeah, and he just couldn't eat for him because warriors can't eat Nurglings. So
Yeah.
I think they go B tier. Um,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know it's difficult, isn't it?
that's about right. I think maybe even above the Bloodmaster.
Yeah, I think so. Because of the utility that they have, and the -1, I think if they didn't have the -1 to hit aura,
Yeah.
you probably would talk about them less. But I think that's actually quite valuable.
Yeah, it's honestly huge. I
Yep.
use the CSM game as an example. Again, I use 6 of them to block 2 squads of accursed cultists from basically controlling the game and doing what they
Yeah,
want to do. So one squad of 6 blocked pen those accursed cultists in over 2 turns, 2 units, and we just went absolutely ham on the rest of the
hmm
army. So it ended up being a close game, but the Nurglings made it a much easier game for me for sure.
yeah, I still like them. Beast and Nurgle. So I don't. I think 2 is worthless, but I think as an individual, like to me, they kind of fill the hole that the whole dropping a unit of Nurglings in to do an action thing did.
Yeah.
Um, but obviously T9 7 wounds, 5 up in one, and if you don't kill it, it's back up to 7 wounds again. It's just really annoying.
Hmm.
And I like them for that. And then obviously their combat's okay. It's all right.
OC2 is quite nice.
OT2 is also quite nice, yeah, because it means if your opponent's tapping an objective with one OC1 or OC2 dude, you
Yeah.
3 instantly extract that on, you take it, which is really good.
And you don't have to sacrifice something more meaningful.
You're putting a 70-point beast of Nurgle down that your opponent has to commit to, otherwise it won't die.
Yeah.
Which is annoying. So I actually rate them quite highly.
I would say probably just above the Nurgle characters in B tier.
Oh, you think that low?
Yeah,
Oh, B tier. So I was looking at A
B
tier,
tier. Yeah.
C tier. Sorry.
No,
Uh,
they're definitely better than Bloodletters in my opinion. I would
yeah,
say just above the
100%.
Nurgle characters.
For 70 points.
Yeah.
I wish you could take them in blocks of 5 because I would definitely take that.
Yeah.
But yeah, plague drones have 2 faces in a Nurgle, in a very Nurgle heavy list. I think one unit at least is very much needed
Yeah.
because you want to do some damage, and they like having run the Nurgle list or a Nurgle heavy list. They actually really up the damage of your big boys,
Mhm.
or even plague bearers. But outside of like, if you're only taking a few Nurgle bits, you probably don't want them. Um, so because I feel like because they're T8 5 wounds, they are quite tough, but like the reason you're taking them is the reroll wounds, right? You're
Yeah.
not taking them for anything else
Yeah.
because they're not going to drop in and do stuff that's a beast job. The damage, like they're not damage isn't great. That's what fiends and crushers do. Like the roles that they could fill, other things fill it better.
Mhm.
Their role is to make your Nurgle stuff wound better if you've got a lot of Nurgle stuff. So I feel like because of that, if they were in it, if we were just talking Nurgle, they would sit high. But because of that, I think they probably go C tier.
I reckon just after the Skullmaster for these
Yeah,
boys.
yeah. But between Skullmaster and Bloodletters, I agree. Right, we're gonna search through this. That again, just it's better than the. Is it even better than the Skullwalker? I don't even know. It. I
I
mean,
don't know what it does.
it gives us cover saves. That's all you need to say on it, right?
Oh
Yeah,
my
the one
god.
army in the game that doesn't care about armor or AP, and it gives you like they must have looked at that and just took the piss, right? Let's give them
The
cover saves,
Unclean
right?
one doesn't even have a 4-up armor save. Like, what's
I
covered?
know, nothing Nurgle does. Nothing Nurgle. Slimex might. Slime's got a 3+
Slimer's
armor.
got a 3-up.
So I give Slimex a 2+ armor save. Oh, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Like, there's not enough AP to it in the game.
Exactly. And also, isn't it like 100 points or something like that?
Something silly like that, yeah.
So, and it doesn't even have an invulnerable save either,
No,
which
no.
no.
I remember the days when it used to be a tough terrain,
Mate,
unkillable terrain piece with
I I
quick
used
burst
I
crawlers.
used to I used to take 120 plague bearers, and that used to sit in the middle of them. I
Yeah,
remember that list. I used to love it. It was my type of list of I'm just going to take this. I'm going to go forward, deal with it. And they just made your plague bearers like faster and more annoying. And that was in the days of there was no such thing as bigger units had to like be in currency to 2 or more models. It was just one, so you could just do a whole line of 30 plague bearers
yeah.
backwards, and it was beautiful.
Oh, when
Right, so
actually
that's
be taken in big squads.
yeah, when you could take them 30s with, and they had 5 up for no pain standard, and they were beautiful.